Hi, this is Myrna, and I wanted to give you some information on three things that might not seem related, but I want to show that they're very much related and that people who are very intelligent sometimes underestimate the Bible. But a lot of things that they are just discovering now in science, the Bible told you long ago. So, the three things that I want to talk about are epigenetics, biblical generational punishment, and astrology, especially if you know anything about astrology, you know that they divide the houses. They divide your chart into houses. There are 12 houses, and the ninth to 12 houses in astrology talk about your prenatal up to your conception up to birth experiences. So, let me get started with epigenetics. Um, Epigenetics is the study of how behaviors and environmental factors can influence the way genes are expressed without altering the underlying DNA sequence. Essentially, it explores how external factors like diet, stress, and exposure to toxins can turn on or turn off certain genes. These changes can sometimes be passed down to future generations, which aligns intriguingly with the concept of generational impact. So, the reason why I remember when I was a little girl, I asked my mom, if I dye my hair red, will my children have red hair? And she was like, no, what would it even make you think that? No, what you have is what you have. But future studies in in this epigenealogy, whatever you call it, has shown that okay, well, if you have a generation of people who are starving, well, a few generations down, you might have people who overeat. And I kind of think that's partially what happened to us as a nation. And also, if you have a group of people who are constantly bombarded with stress and pressure, the children may be in a totally different environment, but still, their genes have been trained to respond to stress, maybe a bit more hyper than others. Now, I'm probably not giving the best examples, but the thing is, you don't just inherit your looks, you inherit certain attitudes. Now, to me, well, let me give another example. Studies have shown that trauma experienced by one generation can affect the stress responses of subsequent generations. This scientific insight resonates with the ideal of inherited consequences, though in a biological rather than a spiritual sense. Okay, I kind of think maybe also in a spiritual sense, because let's look at the Bible. Now, the thing is, I used to read. Now, my whole thing about the Bible is that God is a loving God. But if you see someone attacking your children, you are going to respond. And if you can, it might be a response that is physical. Well, I think that the Most High is the same way, where you see him reacting or telling people to react in a physical response. It is self-preservation for them. He's telling his people to you have to respond physically because you're being treated in a physical way. Well, I think that now, besides that, I think that that is love, that you don't allow people to harm the people you love, especially your children. So I think that when God tells people or told his people in biblical times to do certain things, it was because these people posed a threat to them. So when God says, well, I'm gonna curse you to the third or fourth generation. Now, when you see that, you're like, but wait a minute, that second generation didn't do anything. Well, I think it's because whatever their tendencies were, it's passing on through the next generations. Now, you can say that that might be environmental. I think that contributes to it, but I think what you do affects your children. So, In the Bible, God mentions generational consequences in passages like Exodus 20, verse 5, where he says, I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sin of the parents to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me. I notice he said only those who hate him. But this is often interpreted as a warning about the ripple effect of sin and disobedience, not necessarily as a direct punishment, but as a natural consequence of actions that can influence future generations. Interestingly, this concept aligns with epigenetics in a metaphorical sense. Just as harmful behaviors or environments can leave a biological imprint on descendants, spiritual or moral feelings can have lasting effects on families and communities. Also, when you look at twin studies, um, even if they're in different environments, twins, identical twins, tend to live similar lives. They came from the same parents, and like it says, you know, God will visit what the parents did on to the third and fourth generations because certain traits are being passed down, not just your physical traits, but also what you're doing, period. Now, to the last one is astrology and the ninth to 12th houses. Like I said, the ninth to 12th houses, your ninth house basically is your conception. So, the ninth through the 12th houses are associated with higher learning, spirituality, and the subconscious. Okay, the ninth house is often linked to philosophy, religion, and long distance travel. This house can reflect the beliefs and values passed down from your parents or the environment during your conception. The 10th house represents career and public image, but also influences of authority figures, including parents. They might symbolize the ambitions or societal pressures your parents experienced while raising you. Your 11th house associated with friendships and community. This house can hint at the social networks and aspirations your parents cultivated during your early development. The 12th house is the house of of subconscious dreams and hidden matters. It could symbolize the emotional and psychological environment during your mother's pregnancy, as well as any unresolved issues passed down. Now, astrology suggests that these houses can provide insight into the circumstances surrounding your conception and prenatal development, offering a symbolic lens through which to view your early influences. So, my whole thing has always been that God is a God of order. Because personally, disorder really is frightening to me because you can't predict it. So when people come up and they say like epigenetics, what your genes have been altered or they are, well, they're not altered, but they're responding differently based upon what your parents were going through. And I do mean both parents. To me, that aligns with what the Bible says about, well, your God will punish those who don't love me to the third and fourth generations. I think that that is part of the order that whatever your parents were doing, now if your parents were horrible people who were doing horrible things to other people, doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be a horrible person, but it does mean it has affected you in some kind of way. I think you have choice over that, but still, astrology pretty much says, well, it tells you these are what your parents are like, and this is what you inherited from them. So I think that they're all telling you pretty much the same thing. It's just a matter of how you say it. But to me, the Bible told it to you first, told you from the very beginning that God is a God of order. Now, I don't generally quote the Apostle Paul too much if I can find a way not to, but I do totally agree with what he said about God is a God of order. So, um, and Paul saying that at 1 Corinthians 14:33, and it says, For God is not a God of confusion, but of peace. And that's the ESV version. But all through the Bible is telling you that God is orderly. It tells you that from the very beginning because it says in Genesis 1, 1 through 2, now the earth was formless and empty, darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. This tells you that order was, well, that God has the power to bring structure to the void. Isaiah 45:18 says, for this is what the Lord says, he who created the heavens, he is God. He who fashioned and made the earth, he founded it. He did not create it to be empty, but formed it to be inhabited. This verse highlights God's purposeful creation, rejecting randomness or disorder. Ecclesiastes 3:1, there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. This was spoken, I think, or written by Solomon, not someone else that I really like to quote that much, but still, I believe very much, yeah, this is true. God is orderly. This verse speaks to the divine order in life's events, affirming that everything occurs according to God's plan. Now, when you look at the Gospels, at Matthew 6:10, it says in the Lord's Prayer, Jesus teaches your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. This reflects the divine order and harmony of God's will. John 14:27, Jesus offers peace to his followers, saying, peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. This passage emphasizes peace and stability over turmoil. And I meant to say Yeshua, but most people know him as Jesus. But I believe, showing respect to try to get people's names correct. I know that personally because many people mispronounce my name. So I try very hard not to mispronounce others. And Mark 4:39 says when when Yeshua calms the storm, he says, peace, be still. This act of calming chaos on the sea demonstrates his authority to bring order. So, what I thought when I was younger was, well, everything seems to have a certain kind of order. So shouldn't people also have that kind of order? And that led me to psychology and also Carl Jung, which led me back to type psychology. And when I found out his reference was basically astrology, I thought, well, okay, let's see what astrology has to offer. But I did want to point out that they are pretty similar and that the thing about college or universities is that they convince you that you know more than definitely more than what's written in the Bible. But if you actually examine the Bible, pretty much everything that you studied is there. It's just a matter of finding it. So, this video was really inspired by Flower Tower, because I generally really like the way she talks. But she has spoken a lot of epigenetics, and yeah, pretty much what I spoke was very similar to what she's already said, definitely in total agreement. I just believe that, okay, that's really great. I mean that people are recognizing that, but it's not new. It's just being expressed a different way. So I hope that you guys like this video, and what's gonna follow is I'll give you a primer on astrology. And this is not to make you a believer. This is just to say that to me, it is further proof that God is orderly. Nothing happens just out there. We're all here. Even if you look, well, I'll just say this briefly before I go into the primer. But if you ever looked at your chart, to me it was fascinating to note that your rising sign is often your one set of your grandparents' sun sign because things are orderly. I noticed that with my own grandson, his rising sign is my sun sign. So that's just one of the interesting things, but I will give you that video now. Just hold on, and thanks for, oh, please like, share, and subscribe. Because I see more of you are watching the videos, but you're not liking them and you're not subscribing. So please, I do have a lot of things I want to talk about or tell you about. So please consider subscribing. So what I will do instead is I will make a separate video on the primer for astrology so that people who have no interest in it won't have to see it. And this is long enough right now. So you guys have a great rest of your day, and remember to like, share, and subscribe. And I will talk with you in a few.